I got it.
You okay?
Hello, everyone.
Are we
Welcome.
streaming?
Are we live?
Are we
Yeah, I
live?
know. I know we're late. Dark
Yeah.
Manana.
Sorry, guys.
We got sucked into a rabbit hole of acoustic impedance databases.
Yeah. Well, not really acoustic impedance database. More like, yeah. Never mind. HRTF
It's-
databases. But anyway,
yeah.
hello everyone. How are you guys doing?
We presumably have a bit of a show for you guys today to talk about some headphones, and we're also going to talk about some measurement stuff, some new research stuff, and then community stuff. But yeah, first of all, just want to say welcome everybody to another Saturday episode. Have with me listener, and no Blaine today, unfortunately, but he may join us on a future one. Yeah. So any opening thoughts, Griff?
Yeah.
Anything happened
Actually,
recently
shit. I
for
should have made
you?
this. I should have made this a topic. But there's only so much we can talk about in this regard. But I feel like this is something I DM'd you not too long ago. I
Yeah,
feel like
I know you are.
2025 might be the best year for headphones since my entry into the headphone hobby. And there are some releases coming that we can't talk about
Oh
that
my god.
make that so. Um,
Well, one of them we can, which is
one of them,
the HDB 630.
yes, the big one, which we
Um,
talked about on the stream last week, which FC Construct, our own FC Construct, is at Toronto Audio Fest and got to hear the HDB 630. He's going to have content coming out about that fairly soon, but he is the first person that I know with really good ears who has heard it and confirmed the hype is real. It's going to be really good. So,
yeah, but just to be clear, the rest of us don't have one yet.
yeah, we don't.
There's a presumably there's one on the way, so I will review it as soon as I get it. But I don't know when that's going to be. Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like unfortunate in my. It's unfortunate that we're getting these so late into the media cycle, right? But it is what it is. The other thing is that, like, as of right now, I believe that the various sort of domestic logistics service is on strike for me. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, probably not helping, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I kind of have that sentiment and I want to talk about that because there are other headphones I've heard that I can't talk about as well that I think do support that. But we
Yeah.
can
We'll get into that.
talk
Yeah.
about that a little later.
Yeah. Um, just as we get going here, as always, these streams are brought to you by headphones.com. So headphones.com, they're the sponsor of this channel and also the Headphone Show. If you want to check out our videos, that's also on the Headphone Show. If you want to read any of our articles, that'll be up on headphones.com. I believe that there's actually a new revamp to the blog site, and I'm not sure if it's live yet, but if it's not, it will be
It
shortly.
should be.
It's so much better than what it was before. So check that out. And there's also like a ton of additional information there on methodology, things like diffuse field, all that kind of stuff. We have our forum at forum.headphones.com, our Discord also, that should be linked in the description of this, so you can follow us there or connect with us there. And I think that's it.
Yeah, that's all the housekeeping out of the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just doing the stream gang ping.
Yep, stream gang ping is real. If you guys are wondering, I am wearing the Audina LE. It's
I don't know why he's chosen to do this.
no, because, okay, here's the thing, right? It's a headphone. This is the original Audina, was so bad that it became this sort of like charming meme in
legendary
a way.
meme status, yeah.
Yeah, and then so like we didn't have Blaine today to wear his meme headphones or whatever it is that he usually does. So I figured I would take on that role a little bit, wearing the Audina. This is the new one. This is the LE, and it's it's still hilarious. So don't think I'm wearing this because this is something that I regularly wear. It's just for the memes. But also, I got to give a shout out to Hifiman for sending it, because I have to imagine that they knew what we said about the previous one, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm surprised that they sent it, but they did. So they sent all of them, all
Yeah.
the new ones. So big shout outs to them for that. And today, our headline topic, we're gonna discuss or give impressions of some of the new models, particularly the HE600, and maybe the one that I don't know if you want to get into the one that you have right now,
I'll
Griff.
get into it. I don't want to give everything away
Okay.
because the full review is coming tomorrow. For those of you who are interested in a full review of the Edition XV, I will have that posted, both a full video and an article tomorrow.
Yeah.
But
There's also the
yeah,
Ananda Unveiled, which is
which I
more
don't.
interesting. Yeah, it's more interesting than I thought. So let's just get into it.
Oh,
Also, the Hindenburg of close packs. Yeah, I
not
just
an
gotta say,
unfair
like,
characterization, I
this
would
is
say. Although I don't think anyone tried doing the Hindenburg Part 2, so maybe that does make it a little bit unique.
Hindenburg Part 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
All right. So the HE600, this one, I don't actually know what the price of this is supposed to be, but the
I think it's like 800.
obvious, yeah, something like that. The obvious comparison is meant to be with the original HE6, right? And because it bears the same name. And I kind of think this is more like a Sundara, personally, than an HE6. But that's not necessarily bad. It's just the HE6 was uniquely characterized by a very low resonance frequency, like a shockingly low resonance frequency, higher moving mass for the diaphragm, and some more esoterica throughout the mid range generally, and ear gain. This one is a lot more normal for its overall sound signature than the HE6, without the low resonance frequency benefits that that one has. Now, I haven't actually gone and specifically tested the resonance frequency for this one, but it's not like with the original HE6, like you could wear it, have it coupled to the side of the head, and still incur a driver FS at like 30 hertz or 20 hertz, and it would just,
Mhm.
it would rise.
Yeah, the rise
Um,
would still be very low in frequency.
Very low. Yeah. This is definitely not like that, because it kind of even tapers off right at 20 hertz. Right. So I'll need to double check what the actual resonance frequency is of this. But this is not one, like, not only is it not as low as the HE6's was, it's also, um, it doesn't actually have that behavior when it's coupling.
Mm.
So this is probably an improvement overall to the design, to do with better sealing pads around the baffle and stuff like that. But there was sort of a benefit to that kind of low frequency lift that the HE6 had that this doesn't exactly.
Okay, but
Um,
now that one does still like extend more than the Sundara, right? Like the Sundara had that integrated
yes,
leak
slightly.
to the
Yes.
pads.
So that was the other cool thing. So this is again why I say it's kind of like a Sundara, because it does. So what was cool about the Sundara is that with its design, it had an integrated leak in between the baffle and the side of the cup, right? And whether it was intentional, I don't know. With the driver that had, it it also didn't have as low of a resonance frequency. Um, but because it had an integrated leak, it actually boosted up the bass before the sub bass drop off, right? And with the HE6, it was just like you could basically do a sweep from with some sort of leak going on between the baffle and the pads, and you could see from 20 hertz there's like a rise for the HE6. With a Sundara, that wouldn't happen. It would be closer to like 50 hertz or like 60 hertz. And with this one, because I'm able to get it to couple, it doesn't have that same kind of lift that the Sundara has,
Right.
right? And I
It
don't
instead just
think
has linear extension.
exactly. I don't think this
Got
has
it.
the same kind of behavior, but also it does still taper down at around 20 hertz a
Oh,
little bit,
okay.
just a tiny little bit, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Um, but the sound here, again, I say it's more like a Sundara, or like a Sundara Plus, like a more detailed sounding Sundara, which is going to sound good to people. Um, for me, it is not my favorite of the bunch. It's also it's good for certain types of music, not as versatile as the Sundara, right? The Sundara, I think, was a little bit more versatile because it was a bit more forgiving, at least to my ear, for certain other genres.
Hmm.
So with that extra sense of clarity that this one has, um, That comes with some trade-offs, I find. So like I was telling you, I was listening to some. I think I was listening to some rock or pop or stuff like that, where I was like, oh, this is actually not the headphone for this. But it absolutely is the headphone for music like jazz and instrumental and classical and that kind of stuff. Like it does totally fine there. So that's my sort of general impression of this. I gotta say, I was hoping that it would be more comfortable.
Mm.
With all of these, like they did a change to the headband. I don't know if we want to show the graphs on the screen of any of this. Maybe we'll save that for the
I
video.
think that's probably best to save for
Yeah.
content.
Okay.
Yeah.
The headbands, like the top headband pieces, feel less cheap than the previous
Agreed.
headbands that the Hifiman were on. But I'm not a fan of the way that they've done the like the strap here.
Yeah.
This one's not as bad, but for whatever reason, it still clamps pretty hard. And they did introduce a little bit of cup swivel, but it is janky as all hell. Like,
Oh,
if you
yeah?
can hear that, that's
I
I
mean,
don't know
I
if
can
yours does this.
I can in fact hear that, yeah.
Yeah. So I still don't love the mechanical design of these. And it still is just it's similar to the Sundara on a larger head like mine. It clamps a bit.
Mm.
Um, so I think probably less than the Sundara. It's probably an improvement over the Sundara. So to me, I think of this as like a Sundara evolution, which is still good, but not HE6 like.
Yeah.
That's my sense of it. But to be clear, a lot of people who've heard this one have also found it to be the favorite, right? They've liked it better than the other new ones.
I feel like it's all been people that I know like brighter signatures, like,
Yeah,
my friend
like to
Delusion,
me,
who's a Susvara owner, like, really enjoys the
yeah.
HD600, and obviously Cameron really enjoys the HE600, so
So that's the thing, is that to me, it's like it's not like massively bright or anything like that. It's just that it's much more clarity focused, and
Mhm.
then some of uh, it's almost like this would work better if it had a little bit more bass to it, and and to its detriment, unfortunately, if you compare it to a sound signature like the Susvara is able to be like a bit on the leaner, brighter side without being quite as aggressive or intense or shrill sounding as the HE600, right? So in that sense, it's like it's Sundara like in the overall sound signature, but for whatever reason, for various different elements of its tuning or the relationship between the mids and then the ear gain, it it's a little bit less forgiving, right? It's more fatiguing for a wider range of music. FT1 Pro excursion issues, not on the HE600.
not on any of these,
Not
no.
on any of these,
Yeah.
no. No issues with that at all. Like that's totally fine. Or unless this person was talking about the FT1 Pro specifically. Oh, just saying versus the FT1 Pro. Right. Good question. So again, because the excursion issues in the FT1 Pro, if you were ever going to do EQ, it would be this one, right? This would be a much better candidate for it. I think by default, I personally prefer the sound signature of the HE600 compared to the FT1 Pro, but the FT1 Pro I think is probably still a little bit more versatile. I personally found the FT1 Pro to be a little bit on the shouty side, whereas this one is less about shoutiness and more about just like that ear gain balance. It actually shifts more appropriately towards the treble rather than that like strong focus point at around like 3 kilohertz, which I
Yeah.
found the FT1 Pro to be about. And so for me, the HE600 works better, but I'm not going to say that it works for everything and that it's it's more specific in a good way, but not in the best way. Then there is a very interesting one. Pardon me for hitting the microphone. There's this one here. Now this is the Ananda Unveiled. I'm going to tell you my reaction to Griffin when I first just like my subjective reaction to this. It was, nope, this is bad. but it's actually not. It's actually a lot. Well, I personally don't like the sound from this one, but it is shockingly well measuring for basically everything above 3 kilohertz. I was kind of surprised at, and like this is basically like Harman, like exactly Harman, if you cut off all the bass. Like, I'm not talking like Harman Target on Gross and stuff like that. I'm talking like what the actual, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like for
I
all
know. I
the
don't think anyone else
human,
knows what you're
anyone,
talking
nobody
about.
else knows this, yeah. But for people who like, this is the kind of ear gain and treble performance that people liked in Harman. Just that this has none of the bass, so it's bright, it's lean, and that's what I don't like about it. But for the actual shape of the upper frequency presentation, like yeah, Griff is having Mac internet. Um, so yeah, Ananda Unveiled. My main issue with this, I have two issues with it. One is that it's too lean for me. It's too bright. I think if it had the bass shelf that you get from something like Harman, or the bass presence, like doesn't even need to be a shelf, this would be fine, or this would be a lot better. But because of its lack of that, it ends up just sounding too lean. But I will say, like the treble timbre. Okay, this is a bit weird. Like there is on one channel for me a peak at around 6 kilohertz, and I kind of think it shows up on the measurements as well. That doesn't exist on the other channel.
Oh,
Yeah, and that to me is the other problem, is that this is a highly modal driver. And you see this with the wibbly wobbly mids, right? The Jaggies are quite strong on this one, stronger than on the HE600, and I feel like that's going to lend itself to problems like what I'm perceiving in one channel. But for the rest of it, it is actually very, very good for its timbre in the treble. Like the specific regions in the treble, fine grained stuff, is shockingly good. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. It's just I don't like it. I'll put it that way.
yeah. So
Um,
I'm very interested in that headphone.
as a
Before,
tool, as a
before
yeah,
I got this headphone, it was one of the two I was most interested to hear other than this headphone, because
yeah.
after using my HD 800 for so long, I've noticed that the sound has a tendency to kind of drift over time with pad wear, and how the baffle kind of gets clogged with dust and stuff, which I try to clean it regularly, but it just
Hmm.
still happens. And it's just a lot warmer of a headphone. And I feel it doesn't actually let me understand what an HD 800 or HD 800S would sound like for someone else, because it's so much warmer. Um,
Yeah.
so I've been looking for another headphone to kind of replace it. And
Hmm.
because the Hifiman Unveiled series of headphones has that whole extremely open design scheme going on, and seems
Go
to
with the
be
ARIA-U. I think
more
ARIA-U is
modem
better.
variant. Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing. I don't know what's all going on with the thing I care about, which is the head uh, difference.
So
I
I
don't know if
actually
that's
think
gonna have
that
the same characteristic as the Aria
yeah,
Unveiled, and if it is, it's like less than half the price, I think.
I
So
don't see why this would be different in that regard, right?
I I would need to see the data first. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know what all is going on in the front volume of that thing, right? Like the front volume of this one is different than any of the other hi-fi mans I've seen. So
Oh,
um,
to me, the biggest difference is that the half the magnets are square, or like not. Yeah, if you can see that,
oh, are those like the guide things that they've
they're not. They're not guides. They're
I
actually the
know they're not guides,
magnets.
but they're magnetic field interrupters of sorts.
So, I mean, Hyperman's tried to do this on a number of their other models as well, where basically they do alternating, or like some of the magnets are rounded off, like
Oh,
completely, like they're not rectangular bars. They're cylindrical bars, and then the other half are rectangular bars.
interesting.
Whereas if you look at some of the higher end models, I think they're all cylindrical. I don't know why they do that. I don't know if this is like intent, like a if there's a benefit to doing it this way,
I'm sure they
or it's
wouldn't do
just.
it if they didn't have some sort of rationale. It's just
But
we
it
don't
could also
wanna
just
go
be to
there.
tell a story about about doing it. I have no
That
idea.
could be the rationale. Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I mean, at the very least, it does help with the no finger poking into the diaphragm, because there's a greater surface area that's actually covered by the magnets here.
Sure.
Because this is a stupid idea, but it's actually beneficial for what we're trying to do, right? So,
Yeah, as an EQ platform is why I was interested in this headphone to begin with, and partially interested on John's part, because I know he and I had a very brief discussion about headphones and how they vary on human heads, and how that matters for doing tests of
Yeah.
listener preference, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But he's interested in purchasing one of the Unveiled Hi-Fi Men because
So again, I think it is better to go with one of the other ones than this one because um, this one is very modal in the mid
the thing
range.
is, it's the same. It's the same with the Aria and the HE1000 and the
The
Sasvaro.
ones that I tested were, if memory serves, some of them were not as modal as this one.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I remember you having to have multiple units because you were
I did
getting
have to have
modal
multiple units for
bullshit
one
in
of
the
them.
chat
Yeah,
list. Yeah,
I don't remember if that was the HE1000 unveiled or
I
the
think it was the
Aria
Aria
unveiled.
Unveiled.
Might have been the Aria unveiled, but yeah, that's the problem with this design, right? Is that
Yeah,
it's very good for exactly this reason,
but
but
only if
like
you're
the
getting a
consistency
unit.
reason, but only if exactly. Oh, or like also, it's very difficult to make this a replicator headphone because you don't know what those modal characteristics are going to be like for other units.
Right.
Um, so like you can't tell. Like it's not like the HE100S where it's like very precise.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's kind of in the ballpark. It's perceptually in the ballpark,
I mean, comparing the average measurements of this headphone with both my measurements as well as
Yeah.
your measurements and Earphones Archive and Psi, in terms of the pressure band response, they're all very consistent. And it seems like the unit to unit consistency is good too. It's just
Right.
where the modes show up and how dramatic these little spikes throughout are
I'm not as
is
worried about
different.
it in the mids, to be honest. I'm more worried about it in the treble if you do get weird
Reasonably so.
inconsistencies. Yeah. Like you can, I mean, even this one has it one for one channel in one spot and one and not in the other channel. It's like that's
Yeah.
gonna happen with these types of designs. And it's like, how perceptually relevant is that? Right, we're talking about very minor, high Q, narrow peaks in
Yeah.
the treble. But when you're trying to do a project like this, like what a lot of these folks are trying to do, it kind of matters that you get some sort of consistency there. I will say I do think that so first of all, I think planars are a good choice for this generally. It seems because based on what we've observed, they seem to behave very consistently, like for this type of design, but also the unveiled stuff generally is like shockingly close. So
Yeah. But that's why I was interested in that one, not really because of the sound quality. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if it's a little
Anyway,
too bright and lean, no real surprise there, but that doesn't really uh, negate what I found
yeah,
interesting about that design.
yeah, I agree. But also like I am surprised at how it's gonna sound weird. People won't be able to understand this because they haven't seen the actual human Harman data, but um, relative to that in the treble, it is actually bang on, like fine grained bang on, no smoothing bang on. Just it doesn't have the bass, so it's just lean and trill, unfortunately. Um, and you can this like it would be a good candidate for EQ as well. I feel just you're probably not going to want to do too much. Like we talked about this before, in the ear gain, you're probably going to want to be cutting rather than boosting, anyways. But this is going to
When you
have
say
higher
ear
harmonic
gain, you're talking
distortion.
about the stuff above 3 kilohertz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna and there's gonna be higher harmonic distortion for a device like this
Mhm.
generally because it's fucking huge, undamped, highly modal drivers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And since you're not, I mean, as far as I'm aware, I don't know if you're also doing any content on the Edition XV, but do you want to talk about that really quickly before I talk about it?
You have a video coming out on this tomorrow. My sense is that Edition XV is one of the headphones of the year, one of the best headphones of the year. But that's not to say that it's exactly the kind of sound signature that I like. Out of all of these new ones, it is still my favorite though. Right? Like at first I thought, oh, maybe I like the HE600 better because it does handle the balance in the treble a little bit better overall for me, but it's just too it's like aggressive where the XV is more, you know, versatile, tolerable, chill. um so I still this is the thing though, like on the Edition XV, I didn't find it to be too warm. Weirdly, the one thing that kind of got to me was I did hear a bit of an upper treble peak somewhere. And I feel like you maybe didn't hear that peak, which is like the opposite of how it usually is for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, so I guess I'm glad you don't hear it as too warm. I think I hear it as maybe slightly overwarmed, a little bit potentially dull.
Yeah, I don't hear it as dull at
But
all. Like it sounds good. Like for
yeah,
the
no, I mean, I say potentially in that there are some recordings that I already know to be warm, and it does
mm,
tow them over
mhm.
the line, kind of like the Pure does, honestly. Um, but I find for most of my music, uh, it's a very I don't want to give too much away. It's a very coherently warm headphone, which is not what I think we've gotten from Hi-Fi Man in the past. They've always been this kind of, at least the egg-shaped designs have always been this kind of warm bright thing where everything under 2 kilohertz
Yeah,
is
yeah.
warm because it's linear, but then there's the recession in the ear gain, and then everything above that is bright.
Warm bright is kind of how I would describe how it sounds to me, but
Yeah.
not in a bad way. Like dark bright is maybe something that I don't like um, as
Yeah, I
much.
mean, dark bright, I think more like Odyssey, but honestly, there are things about this headphone that remind me more of the Odyssey presentation than the
Yep,
Hi-Fi Man presentation.
yep.
Like how
I agree.
because it is so much darker in, let's say, the low treble and mid treble, everything under 2 kilohertz gets pushed forward such that, like, if you were looking at it on a graph, you would want to normalize the mid range higher than you typically
Higher.
would
Yep. So that
than
whole section
with
is
other
now.
Hi-Fi Man headphones. So
Yeah.
you get this kind of like chesty, potentially boxy, but like thick, dense bass presentation that you don't get with any other Hi-Fi Man, just because the response is so much more boosted in the treble, and the overall tilt of the frequency response is so much more treble focused, and maybe potentially more like a linear kind of flat slope when you consider that the warmth and the bright are maybe balancing against each other more. The XV is more warm, like it is more very clearly warm. um
Yeah.
but man, it I have to agree that it seems like one of the headphones of the year, if not the headphone of the year. I feel like this is a spoiler. I feel like it's the first time a company that isn't Sennheiser has offered a real compelling warm neutral alternative to the HD 650, in that it answers for a lot of the issues that people that aren't me have with the 650, like the lack of bass or
Mhm.
the soundstage not being so great. It compromises a little in the mid range, but frankly, I think the bass and treble, at least for me, is better than the HD 650, which not many headphones I can say that about.
And it
And
has full in your bass extension.
full linear flat bass extension with big driver and all of the benefits that come with that for leak tolerance. And it is a lot more open than the HD 650, at least to my ear. It is
Yeah.
very fucking weird to lavish praise on a Hi-Fi Man headphone, because if y'all know, they haven't made anything for me that I would ever consider owning or spending money on.
Yeah.
Um, but this is probably the first open back headphone in a while, like since I bought the HD 800S that I've been, or HD 800, that I've been like, yeah, I probably want to own this long term. Um,
And you're annoyed by that.
I'm very annoyed by that. Yeah, because
'Cause it was
with
your
something like
narrative.
this, I don't know how long it's gonna last. I don't know, like, if the comfort is gonna work for me long term. I have a capper strap, but it's a little more difficult to implement it with this because I got to remove this one with like two different size Allen wrenches on both sides, and see how that works. It's not terrible for me comfort wise. It is pretty good, but yeah, the fact that I feel comfortable putting it in the same discussion as the HD 650 should be taken as basically the highest praise you can give an over ear headphone. And the fact that I think, honestly, for most people, it's probably going to be more well rounded than that headphone is like, I have never been able to say that about anything except maybe the MDR MV1, but for a completely different kind of customer, like a completely different sound signature. It nails the same things the 650 does in terms of build and comfort and all that stuff, but it's much more V-shaped for the bassy trebly boys. This one I feel like improves on the things the 650 has historically not done so well, doesn't compromise that hard in the mid range, and is a similar price. And just comes across as a very smooth, warm, neutral headphone for me, such that I've really, really been enjoying my time with it.
See, they need to make an edition XV Unveiled. Then I'm in.
So Joel, something interesting about this headphone, and I don't know if this is just me talking to Joel. I don't know if everyone's going to have the context that we have, but the places it dips in the rig response are the places where we typically see rises in the blocked canal data for headphones. So that 5 kilohertz region, that 10 kilohertz region, and the places where it doesn't dip is that kind of 7-8 kilohertz region.
This is so lopsided.
Maybe that's why you were getting such bad channel imbalance.
No, I
But
think it's because it's a bad headphone.
so Joel, I haven't done Meyer measurements. I'm waiting for Doug to get one because he's the only person I know that has a Meyer rig with a DF like compensation. It would be great if you
DF-like.
could get one too, because that would be another source of trustworthy data.
Hmm.
But on my head, I do get a very, very smooth response from 3 kilohertz all the way to like 12 kilohertz. It, it's in the pipeline, Joel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for people who want something like the HG650, but better bass and better spaciousness or whatever, I don't really care too much about the second part, but it does have better bass, and on my head it has better treble. So this is probably the headphone I would end up reaching for, even if I think as a like audiophile neutral headphone, the 650 is more neutral. The 600 is more neutral. It is something that is more me, I think. So
It's funny because like I don't hear it as overly warm or warm poo at all, which is like when you love something, that's usually my
yeah,
oh, it's
you're usually like, oh, this is fucking disgustingly warm.
yeah, but I don't hear it that way at all. I do hear the warmth, but I don't hear it as like cloyingly warm or stiflingly warm or blunted or
Me neither.
rolled off or anything.
I think the expectations of a lot of people who come to a Hifiman headphone and put it on their head are going to be like, okay, how
You're just hedging for
this
Hi-Fi
is
Man
going to have
customers.
a lot of treble and
Yeah,
detail and that
yeah, yeah,
all of
yeah.
that intangible stuff. I feel like the equation's completely different with this headphone. Like again, it's more like an Odyssey where you get more of a focus on the low and center mid range
Hmm.
than the bass necessarily or the treble. So
XV would be endgame if it were unveiled and had the 1 to 2K dip
so the
take
one
on
to
the
two K
characteristic of
dip
the
is
unveileds.
different. It's not necessarily like so much smaller, like the difference between a Sundara and an XS, where the Sundara clearly
Sure,
has that more filled in. I would say it's kind of in between.
in between. Yeah,
In terms of the veiledness of it all, I don't know that they necessarily veiled it more at the back, other than just having this other
I mean
grill.
that's
If you
that's
look through it, you can still see the magnets.
so here's the thing,
Like
right? The whole bit about the unveileds was like the trend seemed to be that it actually filled in what people would refer to as the soundstage dip, but I also don't know if that's because of the like
the
unveiling,
grill.
because if you look at the grill on that headphone and many of the other ones, it's you can actually just see more surface area of the driver through the grill. Like it's almost like that's more unveiled technically for
Yeah,
more
I mean,
surface
I
area.
think with this one, the tuning was much more to do with the stuff in the front volume. So I'm not going to be able to hear
Right.
you while I do this. Actually, I want to take it off, but there's a like grill mesh in front of
Right.
it that's like seems like
No,
a very intentionally
but that's what I'm saying about the
chosen.
other ones as well. I feel like the unveileds, they called it unveiled, and this is part of like the concept of what they're trying to put forward, acoustically. But this is just like a way to tune the headphone, right? Like to me, it's like that's just
Just another
another
parameter.
tuning parameter, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is cool. I mean,
for
it's
sure.
stupid, but it's cool, I guess.
Yeah, but so that's where I am with this headphone.
Yeah.
Review will be out tomorrow. All of our measurements will be out tomorrow. Andrew has measured his pair. I've also measured it on my rig. Good compliance between the two. Enough so that I wouldn't necessarily be worried about the lack of unveiling, like
Hmm.
the kind of indicator we look for low acoustic impedance, which probably isn't the complete story here and is probably an oversimplification.
Hmm.
Being that kind of behavior in the canal resonance area, it seems cromulent between Gross and
Have you considered though that listener is ruining our content because he doesn't like the ROA?
I do start the XV review by like by making it obvious that I'm not a
Uh,
Hifiman fan.
yeah.
And I point out specifically that the headphones, from this lineup, this lineup, this lineup, this lineup, all too bright for me, and that's why this is interesting.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Uh, okay. Audina LE. Um,
what everyone has been waiting for.
I mean,
Here, actually,
it's
you talk about that. I'm gonna go get a drink really
okay.
quick.
Okay. So it's basically uh, meme worthy, just like the previous one was. The difference is that the material here is more of like the kind of material you get on like a camera, like it's sort of a textured plastic, but it also feels a little bit fake. But then that this sounds like knocking on wood when I'm doing this, and it's another. It's a closeback that has almost no passive attenuation, right? Like it does have some in the upper high frequencies, um, but what it does is it kind of focuses that information down in frequency. So, like I can hear there's an HVAC going on right here, and you can still hear it perfectly clear coming through. Um, and it's just the tone is slightly shifted down in frequency. Um, And as far as the sound is concerned, it's very strange. Does fine for instrumental music, but that's typical of a lot of headphones that have weird colorations. And then I move to my test tracks, the disqualifier tracks, like Change the World, and it immediately fails as expected. So um, the same horror that Cameron experienced with the original is likely present here as well. I haven't measured this one yet. Mostly just using it for the stream, but I did listen to music on it earlier. Fixable with EQ. I mean, anything's technically fixable with EQ if you know what you're doing, but it's one where it's like I wouldn't bother because the actual intention of this type of headphone, which is for it to be a close back, doesn't really work that well. So I don't know why you would choose this over a better open back, you know, unless you specifically liked the kinds of colorations that it imparts, you know, like there are people who are going to hear this and go like, oh, I really like this, how this particular coloration affects this piece of music that I like or this recording, right?
We're just gonna say they like the soundstage. They're not gonna use that exact language.
They're not going to use that language, but that's what's going on, right? Like they're going to talk about the detail and how the texture of the piano and whatever, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then and it's true. Like you can listen to. I'm sure you can find a recording where that is all true, but then you listen to something like I was, I don't know. I was just talking about my test tracks, right? Change the World, and it's like, what is going on here? This is like the worst thing of all time. So that's the downside with these more esoteric tunings is that they don't have the kind of versatility and normalness that makes listening to music, a wider range of music, enjoyable. So if you only listen to those specific recordings that work well for these weird colorations, then this is great. But if you listen to, uh, you know, more than one recording, heaven help you. But that's sort of how it goes for a lot of these things, right?
Indeed, yeah, that is I
Yeah.
mean, not unexpected for this headphone. I
No.
pretty much just figured it was going to
Can
be
you
a
guys
less
hear that?
expensive version of that kind of thing. That makes me sad listening to that.
That's fun. All right. Oh, Don Joe's here. We were going to talk a little bit about some of the conversation that we had. I think.
Oh,
But
that's a little bit later, but yes.
a little later. But yeah, so just to kind of wrap up the Hifiman of it all. Big shout outs to Hifiman for sending these, especially this, because knowing what we would say about it. We will have reviews coming out of the XV, and I'm going to do maybe like a wrap up of all of them, or at least talk about the HE600. And I actually, it's just all of them I think are interesting. All of them are somewhat new, like not just new like in terms of they're just released, but new in terms of like they are kind of like an evolution of the stuff that Hifiman's been doing, and some of them are, well, one of them at least is very, very good. Um, so I think To me, this is almost like, apart from this, a return to form for Hi-Fi Man, because I feel, at least in like the past year with some of those other releases before they did the Unveiled series, they were just sort of pumping out a lot of things that were basically the same and not very good. And now there's some new ones that are like, that actually have me, genuinely excited. So
Yeah, I'm pumped in a way I've never been about anything else Hi-Fi Man has ever done. So
yeah,
yeah, very very optimistic that they had the insight to make the decision to make something very different
yeah,
for the kind of customer that wouldn't really pay attention to the other headphones, because yeah, it fills a hole in the market that needed to be filled. And now I think this represents some serious competition to
yeah.
basically the rest of the headphone landscape. So review on that
All
will
right.
be out tomorrow.
Yeah,
All right, now let's move on to. I think the next thing we had was the new Harman paper, the new paper
yeah.
that. Well, so not the new Harman paper, which actually now I'm realizing this is mislabeled because Sean Olive is not with Harman anymore. So
The new Sean Olive paper, the
this
Sean
is a
Olive
new
DCA
Sean
paper.
Olive and Dan Clark paper.
Yes.
Um, which was Reluctant Engineer loves his XV. So Reluctant Engineer is, of the people I've encountered in the hobby, probably the single person with the most similar hearing to me, with both headphones and IEMs.
Got this too, by the way. So
Oh
there's
shit!
something
I
in
didn't
that.
know you had that. Wait, you should talk about that.
I haven't listened to it yet. I just had to charge
Oh,
it.
okay, okay, okay.
It just shut up. So
Yeah. All right. But yeah, not at all surprised that Reluctant Engineer loves his XV. He actually told me to look into getting one, which is a large reason why I have one. But anyway, so this is not a Harman paper. Apologize for the mislabeling. It's
shame.
it's it's Dan and Sean. And for full clarity's sake, I haven't actually read through the entirety of the paper yet. I understand the gist of what was done, but when it comes to specific methodology stuff, I just haven't had a chance to read it because I've been working on the XV stuff.
I need to take this off my head. I'm sorry.
And yeah, the cute little headphone that Andrew had that was uncharacteristically colorful for anything he would have in his house was the CMF Headphone Pro by Nothing. I don't think we're planning a DT270 review. I haven't seen anything about it. But about this paper, it was basically Sean and Dan testing how similar certain different derivations of the Harman curve based on different groupings of headphones measured on different rigs, how similarly all of these differently derived Harman targets sound. So they took the original like Welty ear rig that was used for the Harman 2018 paper. They measured the Noir X and Noir XO on that rig, generated a Harman target preset for it, and then did so with the 5128 and the Gross system with the KB5000 ear, but with not just those two headphones. So they generated a target response with 7 different headphones of different acoustic schemes on the on the anthropometric Gross system and the 5128. And then they also used data from an older study where Sean measured 20 headphones on the 5128 and the Welty ear, and
Mhm.
used that to kind of come up with a translation so that there are a few different versions of these ear specific Harman targets based on different samplings of headphone measurements. And they compared them all to see how similar they were. There are some interesting conclusions in this paper, some of
Well,
which
first,
are just.
is this an open? I forget if this is open access or
That is a good
because
question. I actually do
we could
not
just
know.
put it on
I
the
do not know.
screen.
It
So
was sent to me in DMs by someone who has an AES membership already. Um, Let me just. The thing is, the AES website is like
it's the
so
worst. I was just looking
terrible.
up like
Let me see.
nothing is indexed properly in the search. It's just good luck trying to find anything.
One second.
Um,
The preferred in-ear. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one.
no, the inner one was actually
Yeah,
like a much more interesting paper generally, because a lot of the stuff in this current one is one that we already kind of knew. Like none of this is surprising to us. Like all the outcomes here, or almost all the outcomes here, are things that we would have expected. Um, And actually, I didn't get a chance to say this in the various unfortunate places that there was commentary going on around this, but I am thankful, or at least I didn't express it sufficiently, but I'm thankful for Dan, uh, for putting this forward, like for trying to do this. Like, I think the framing of it is maybe a little bit not what I would have wanted, but I think it's great that folks like Dan are wanting to look into this stuff. you know?
Yeah, can't help but agree. Okay, so yeah, the paper's not public, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay.
So can't do any sharing of the paper here, unfortunately, in terms of its
Either way, I
actual
think
content.
your
But
summation is that will do.
well, I didn't really get to the conclusions yet,
Yeah.
which are things, yeah, we, as you say, broadly knew already, which is that you can't statically compensate a target response from one fixture to another because headphones, when placed on heads, have their own emergent interactions that cause the response to differ, um, especially so on the 5128, which is a more load sensitive fixture. So
Mhm.
there's a degree of difference that comes from putting a, say, Noir XO on a 5128 versus a Gross system that you won't get with something like an HU1000 when you measure the two headphones on the same system. And for that reason, it's really hard to take what we have currently as the way to derive a headphone target, which is based on the response of a headphone on a given fixture. It is just a smoothed, EQ'd frequency response of a headphone, and have that translate to other systems when the load interaction is going to be different. So we knew that.
This
Um,
is one of the things that we were giving Sean shit over, because that's what he tried to do when he originally tried to transpose Harman over to the BNK5 and 2.8. He did
yes.
so with
Now, I
a
think
number of different models
I don't
before
necessarily
this.
think there's a huge issue with that, as long as it's not prescribed as the Harman target. Like it's not the
Right.
one true single target that everyone obsesses over, which is
Yes.
the second conclusion here, I think, is that the way they phrase it in the paper is that every headphone needs its own specific
Oh
calibration,
my god.
which
This was the dumbest, and not that specific, because that's true. Well, that's true if this were a
True,
goal.
that is a way to phrase something that
Yes.
is
But
technically true about this, but
this is my
nothing
biggest
like
issue
that would
with,
ever be
yeah.
useful, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's no actual utility to headphone specific calibrations like that.
Yeah.
Um, but it does kind of lend credence to the fact that, especially with a source sensitive measurement fixture like the 5128, we don't want to be over fixating on a single curve, especially one that was derived with a reasonably high acoustic impedance headphone on a rig that we now know to have a reasonably high acoustic input impedance.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and so like I said earlier, I really like that they did this. My main issue with it is the framing of it is in terms of a golden calf, right? So if to explain that a bit, this is all done in terms of the Harman target, right? This is not done with the bigger picture in mind, which is that these devices actually behave differently across different heads, and the way they behave differently across different heads, right? That part of
yeah,
it is not in this sufficiently, but it is what Sean has been talking about. So Dr. Olive, the one who's conducted the research, that's what he's been talking about on Twitter, or whatever, the on Blue Sky, whatever the
yeah.
um
So I don't want to be too controversial here, but I will
no,
say
be controversial.
seems like it seems like the paper and the way it was written and what conclusions were drawn from it were very much so a primary interest for Dan.
Yes.
Whereas it seems like what I think is more interesting to you and me, and seems like the more interesting conclusion to people like Sean, if you follow his Blue Sky, is that single target curves are kind of not it when we have these emergent load interactions that mean the response for people with the same pair of headphones across a population is going to be substantially different.
Do
And
you want to
there's
pull up the tweet from Sean?
sorry.
Do you want to pull up the tweet from Sean? Because there's an additional graph here that I don't think
Yes.
made it into the
Yes.
paper that is
So let
highly
me
relevant. And
pull that up. I
yeah,
think you guys can see this, right?
uh,
Confirm chat. You can see this. Everything's good.
I cannot. Maybe I'm delayed.
Okay, cool. So this is Sean's little post, which came out within the last day or so. He asks, how much is listener segmentation, different preferences for bass and treble beyond a reference target, explained by how the headphone, couples and interacts with the impedance of the ear. And then he has an image of a open canal microphone placed in people's ears, which was there to control leakage and seal, as well as study the interactions between the individual ear and the headphone. And then you see this is a DCA Noir X Open measured on the subjects tested in the paper. And you can see the areas of variation he's highlighted are a 7 decibel variation in the uppermost treble and the lowermost bass. But we also see some variation in the mid band and the lower treble as well that is substantial. And obviously, we don't have the HRTS for these subjects, so we don't know how these differences play into their expectation of sound or what their ears would typically be doing to a speaker at a distance. But we do see that there are interactions that cause, as Andrew would say, some scrungle when it comes
Some struggle.
to evaluating sound versus a single target line, um,
Mhm.
especially because the headphone that we use to make a target will also have interactions like this. Like it will also have these variations across heads and ears. So it's not just an issue of the headphone people are listening to, but also the headphone that the target is made on in the first place. So then he continues to say, and you'll see that we have Resolve in the comments here being a simp.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
Above left is an open canal microphone placed on several individual ears. Right are the frequency response variations measured on the individuals. Most of these differences are larger than different proposed target curves, which begs the question, which Andrew would say it doesn't beg the question, it
Raises the
raises the
question.
question. Why waste more time studying preferred target curves when these effects are the one that needs to be addressed? What good is a target curve if it cannot reasonably be produced for every listener? Of course, some of the segmentation effects are related to taste and hearing loss, which isn't shown here.
So this is where I have to be critical of the research. And I don't like to be critical of the research because I think we're all fortunate for it being done.
Yes,
But it's the
we are all simps for Sean
yeah, but
and Todd
it's the same
and Omid
criticism
and
that I have for much of the rest of the research, and it's to do with the communication of it. The communication of it is going to lend itself more to false narratives emerging, as they very much have in this case as well, right? Like the first reactions that people had to it were just deep misunderstandings of what this actually shows, and continued, right? And for anybody who actually understands this stuff, like it was just like a facepalm moment for the way that people were reacting to it. um and that's in large part because of the way that this research is like targeted towards a specific goal, right? Whereas if it's just done and then we get these outcomes, we're able to actually get the much more important point to all of this, and that's what Sean is making here, right? This is what should be taken from this whole thing, but we don't get that in the actual work itself, because the actual work itself is specifically trying to suss out this
it's
one.
very concerned with single target curve
Yeah,
as opposed to what
exactly.
Sean is saying
And
here.
and to me, like the idea, the hilarious readings of this that had to engage with, unfortunately, um, were things like, oh, so you knew that you have to calibrate individual headphones to match that Harman target on that head to basically like subtract the acoustic impedance benefits this system gives you. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah, no,
anyways,
I
we
think
get
some
these
people
erroneous.
have their minds made up
Yeah,
already about the B&K 5128 being worse for some reason, even though uh, any of the scientifically minded people, whether it be making products or evaluating products or doing research like Sean, all see the benefits of a more source sensitive measurement fixture. For some reason, people have made their mind up, and that is seen as a flaw, that it has this difference as opposed to a more honest characterization of the behavior of
Yeah.
these devices.
See, but
Um,
now it's because we're clearly being paid by Vince.
we pay
at,
them
the-
so much money. We get nothing from this arrangement.
at Big B and K.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
you know,
yeah, Dan Clark did buy the 5128
yeah.
KZO, and I think it's because,
So did
you
Sean.
know, yeah, well, I think it's largely because Sean did. Like, I think
Yeah.
Sean
No,
doing
it's
anything.
because Jude did.
I mean, Jude did it very early. I think
I
Jude
know.
did it before most other people understood the benefit. So I mean,
So
credit to him for doing so. But
it's true. We didn't buy it. Like Jude was obviously like talking about this because he moved over to it, not really with any sort of reference point, but just because he liked to show measurements on it. Um, we ended up getting it because of conversations with Blaine and Oratory. So Blaine and Constantine, who were very much interested in the acoustic impedance
who are
side
very
of it.
much bought and
But
paid for by Ruling Care, of course.
of course, yeah. But at the time, this wasn't even something that we were aware of. Like, or at least certainly I wasn't aware of that being the key advantage, right? It was just sort of like Blaine, investigate this, and that's what he came up with, right? Um, and sorry, that was also at the time when I don't know if this is public. Actually, I don't know if I could say the recommendations uh, for the 5 and 2/8 that Oratory gave
Recommendation?
back when Sam was
Are you talking about like LMG?
yeah. I don't know
Like
if that's
the
public.
target curve?
No, the rig. Anyways, we don't
No.
need to get into that. But yeah, it was in conversation with those guys. But I did want to, to me at least, because there's confusion around what the benefit actually is for these systems, and like we've talked about it being an acoustic impedance, and people clearly don't understand that, even in the light of research being done by Sean, they still don't understand that. Um, if Gross were to come out with a 4.3 based system, right, like on the 4.3 standard, um, we would want to get that too, right? We would want to get, because there's a good chance that would be even more useful because the pinna would be based on a different data set, right? Or like intending to be, anthropometric, but we know that those are different data sets and they behave differently. So having that would be huge, right? And potentially more valuable, more accurate, and we would want to get that too. So but anyways, well, oh yeah. So what I wanted to kind of, still just rant about generally with this study in this paper is um the presentation of it, or I guess the framing of it in this context is ripe for misinterpretation, as we've seen, and ripe for I guess abuse, because now we should never have been surprised that people have misused Sean's research to begin with, because of the limitations in terms of the communication that exists in these papers and this research, right? Such that you need to have Blaine reading the fucking tea leaves to be able to actually, like, or doing the parsing of the data to be able to get what the actual results are, rather than these specific uh, goal oriented research initiatives, right? um, it feels like it's missing I don't want to say missing the forest for the trees, because it's kind of the wrong framing of it, but it's kind of missing the whole point. It's missing what the research actually points to. The same was true of the recent IEM research, right? Where it's not that recent, it's like over the last year, but the stuff that was basically showing that, there's the Sound Guys target and then there's Harman IE, and they were both very similarly preferred by the same people. It's like, the outcome there shouldn't be that Harman still does well. The outcome there is that, holy shit, the same people prefer extremely different targets
Yeah.
or extremely different sound signatures. And really, it should be about the relationship between bass and treble. That's what we're getting out of this. but nobody seems to be reading that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it depends on the questions that people come to the research with. If the question is what is the best target curve, they're going to look for the answer to that question. If the question is what kind of headphones do people like, the data's still there. It's just not the interpretation that I think a lot of people end up bringing to these works of very important science. So
Yeah.
it's a shame, but I'm grateful that the science is done because it allows us to
Yeah.
get
There needs
important
to
data like
be
what kind of headphones responses do people like.
yeah. And with
Um,
this one in particular, right, getting it I don't know if this is commissioned by Dan or what that relationship was like, but like
I mean, Sean's a consultant. I assume he was
yeah, I
paid
assume
to
it's
consult
something
with
like that.
the
Yeah. It,
yeah.
the fact that it's publicly available is also a very good thing, right? So I want to
Mhm.
commend them for doing it, but I also
Of
think
course.
it's like a um, very much in the framing of the DCA stuff um,
Yeah, I mean, and
for their goals, right?
I feel like this is incredibly presumptuous to say.
Hmm.
Um, I do feel like I wish these papers were like sent to like Blaine or Constantine or like someone else I know is like capable of peer reviewing one of these works.
Hmm.
Um, if only because I feel like more eyes on it would potentially strengthen some of the conclusions. I think all of the data collection and stuff like that is done perfectly fine. I don't really see any issue with the actual science being done. It's just when it comes to conclusions for stuff like this, I
But
feel like
like
there are just some things that are, missed a little bit. And I feel like Maya, who
Maya,
friend of the program and frequent poster in our Discord server and other places, had I think the most salient unpacking of the data here and what was actually important about it, which is not to characterize a Harman target, but to characterize the fact that headphones are the problem that need to be solved, not measurement fixtures or target responses. Like the fact that headphones have these variant reactions to an earload um, is a bad thing. It is a
hmm
thing that can be solved for with design, like if you're making a super open large driver hi-fi man, it does minimize a lot of that issue.
hmm
Um, but with something like Dan's
well,
designs where there's a lot
even
of acoustic
well, hold on
impedance and
though,
a smaller
because
driver that's tighter.
but that's only with the planars. The Carina is one that is
Yeah,
likely to
the ESTAT principle is quite different in terms
yes.
of its acoustics than the planar diaphragms he uses. But no, you're absolutely right. Like it is not a DCA headphone problem all the way. It is just with some of his more
High
um,
acoustic impedance
yeah
designs.
high acoustic impedance devices.
Yeah.
But that is the issue here. Like that is what this paper goes a fair way to characterize as a problem with targets, period, which is that
Hmm.
because they're based on being replicated on headphones, and in the past, the headphones used by and large were not source insensitive enough, let's say, except for the 2013 paper where they used an HD 800. How far can we bring any of this stuff anyway when we know the load interactions that headphone would have produced on all of the subjects in those papers may have looked like that image we showed of
Yeah.
uh, Sean's blocked canal measure or open canal measurements of the Noir XO. So there's just a lot
Well,
more
maybe
questions than I feel like people give credit for when it comes to that old research, as good as it is.
well, but that's also like one of the other problems is that the K712 is going to have weirder. Well, again, we don't know for sure, but I
No,
assume
we
it's not.
know, we
Yeah,
know,
you
yeah.
know where I'm going with this. There's going to be it's. I that's why I wish I know why he picked the K712s because that's a Harman company, and you want
Yeah,
the
people
replicator thing to be.
he's never said this like on a video or like in a paper or something like that, but
Mm,
at SoCal 2023 or 2024, he did admit that the reason they had moved away from using Sennheiser headphones was because AKG's marketing team or Harman's marketing team was like, you guys have
yeah,
to use AKG headphones.
but
Like
it's so
you guys
much
have to
worse.
have them it's so much worse. Like I and to be fair, even the Sennheiser HD 518 was really not that great. It sucks that the large studies
Yeah,
had bad headphones for
yeah.
replicators, and the smallest one that still has interesting conclusions, but the smallest one had the HD 800. But yeah, the K712 is absolutely a sound source sensitive headphone, and or
Yeah.
an earlobe sensitive headphone. Um, it produced a massive difference under 2 kilohertz between the Gross system and the 5128. One interesting finding was that the impedance interaction, so the stuff in the pressure band under 2 kilohertz for the Welty ear as well as the KB5000 ear was basically the same. So that was actually a very useful data point for what we're doing, because it meant we didn't have to guess at the interaction for the Welty ear with headphones in that band. But man, it does make it harder to blindly trust the single smoothed EQ'd HPTF that is the Harman target. Um,
Well, and that kind of goes back to the original, like many of the assumptions to do with the original, the outcomes, I guess, of the original research, anyways, right? Which is that everybody was basically using that with Gross, not considering the HPTF variants across
or
heads, right?
or invariants. Like the whole problem with the Gross systems is that they homogenize the stuff
Oh,
under
sorry, yes, but I'm just talking about
the
like as far as the way that headphones would perform on that versus the Welty version, right?
yeah.
Um, and what the difference would be there, right? So the assumption would be that this is good enough to actually make it like that single line kind of target, assuming that would be that would translate, and
Mhm.
it we have data now to show that it's not necessarily the case. And if
Yeah.
anything, that's also another thing that should come out from this. That should
Yeah.
be, the salient bit about this, right? Like people, one of the even when we bought a 5 and 2/8, right? One of the concerns that we had was that it was exactly the I think the concern of the or the same concern that anybody who was looking at the potential widespread adoption of this had as well, which is that there was not a very good map for using this device. But
Yeah.
the problem is that map that existed wasn't great for the existing devices either,
Yeah.
and people didn't know that. They didn't realize that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so even in that video that I made ages ago, where I talked about how Harman is only compatible with Gross, and that having to move to the BNK 5 and 2/8 kind of meant that we're in a bit of a wild west, right? It was the latter part of that's is technically true, but the first part of it I don't think really is, because um, we were already in a bit of a wild west.
Well, yeah, because I think bringing it back to this paper, the conclusion is that you need headphone specific calibrations. The
to
AKG
make to
K712
make
Harman
the
target is
yeah
a headphone specific
specific
calibration. It's just
calibration to make it relevant.
you didn't see all the stuff that was going on under 2 kilohertz because the Gross system wasn't showing it. So
Yeah,
we just had a lot more certainty than
yeah,
than we should have, which is
yep,
why looking for absolution or safety in a Harman target based on the Gross system is kind of an exercise in futility,
yeah,
because it's just not telling you everything. Like if we were to specify a Harman target starting on the 5128 or preferably on human ears, um, and we did actually say EQ both a HE1000 and a Noir to that on the 5128, and they did measure identical, they probably would actually sound more similar. But then when you bring it to the Gross system, the Noir would have so much more bass and
hmm hmm
low mid range, which it all depends on the starting point, and everything points to the 5128 being the starting point that would better characterize the acoustic behavior of these devices. And this paper kind of shows that, and
yep,
some people aren't accepting of that conclusion and are content to kind of see the finding here as there is a way to take the behavior of the Harman target on the original headphone and backport it to the
yeah,
Gross system. But
yeah.
I mean, I think anyone, and even Sean, kind of understands that that's kind of,
It's not the point. Like,
it's not the point.
yeah,
The point is that human ears are going to make headphones do wild shit depending on the acoustics of the headphone, and that's a problem to solve with headphones.
that is also coincidentally exactly what Charles Sprinkle said when we were chatting with him.
Yeah, yeah. So Charles Sprinkle for anyone who wasn't on the stream last week, Charles Sprinkle from Cali, their lead acoustics engineer, who's responsible for the disappointing Cali HP1,
But
but
also the
yeah,
amazing
yeah.
Cali
Also,
speakers.
all of their incredible speakers. He knows plenty.
Yeah.
I think he's just, um, you know, limited in what they were able to do with their first headphone of all time.
Yeah.
And he seems very optimistic about what they're working on in the future to kind of handle some of that stuff. So excited to see
Yeah.
what they come up with. But yeah, he does also know about stuff like this, and and any competent acoustics engineer is going to know this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You
This is
know,
stuff they already know. So like when these papers are released, it's more of like a public confirmation of widespread behave of this being a widespread thing, right? Um, not just something that is in an engineer's brain. Um,
yeah,
Conclusion here. Shout outs to Dan Clark and Sean Olive for putting this together. Shout outs to Maya for giving the only really, and Sean, of course, for giving the only real sensible takes on this that I've seen so far. I look forward to hopefully having some improved communication with the research that actually gets done so that people aren't drawing these erroneous conclusions
yeah,
from it.
hope so.
People have an easier time with it, ideally.
Yeah,
So let's move on
and
to
just want to say one last time, if you guys aren't following Sean on Blue Sky, you really should. Um, as useful as the research is, it's very, very useful to be able to interact with and ask clarifying questions or talk to the primary source of all of this work. He's also just a splendid guy and he's fun to talk to. So
yeah,
highly, highly recommend if you're interested in the science stuff to follow him
yeah.
on Blue Sky, because that's where you will see stuff like the post I just showed that wasn't contained in the paper, but is arguably more interesting than anything else contained therein.
Does he
At
post that
least for
stuff
me.
on Twitter as well?
I don't
I
know.
feel like it's
I
mostly
don't have
Blue
Twitter
Sky these
anymore.
days. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, my autofocus is hating me today.
Okay, let's move on.
Oris asks, we need more, or says we need more Type 4.3 hats with different anatomies. Yes, that
Yeah,
is exactly the point.
yeah.
That is exactly the point.
Okay, you had something you wanted to talk about. The card I have is measurements useful. Because you were
So
kind of
yeah,
explaining it to me, and I kind of just gave up on trying to fit
that's
it
how
into
most
the card
most
of this
conversations with me.
size.
Yeah, most conversations with me end up with the other person just giving up. Just had enough. Yeah, so this I wanted to raise this in part because of some of the reactions that I've seen to people maybe engaging with, whether it's engaging with our content or other content that they've seen online that shows um, more of the acoustic behavior of headphones from a data perspective, and reveals kind of the differences that we can expect across different heads. And um, there's a perspective that people seem to have, and I've seen it in the comments in our chat as well, that I want to push back on. And that perspective is, if this stuff is all so variant and is behaving differently on different heads, and we're getting these unique sort of emergent interactions as a function of acoustic impedance, or in the case of IEMs, the length mode resonance being at different spots depending on the length of the ear canal, all these kinds of things, right? The pattern of resonance is to do with putting a thing in the ear. What is the point of reading measurements at all? Right. So what is the point of any of that? Or in one of the recent videos that I saw from Lachlan, he gave good information. It was on the AirPods Pro 3. He gave good information about IEMs. Shockingly, it was like bang on information. But then the conclusion that he drew from that was, there's no point in looking at measurements unless you're comparing it to another product. And that is what I want to push back on, right? That idea of like, we can just throw our hands up and say anything goes, in light of this, in light of what we, understanding measurements better. I think uh, Blaine briefly touched on this in the last stream that we did, which was along the lines of, just because you don't know necessarily if you like apples or oranges, you probably don't like feces, and the measurements help kind of illuminate that. But I think it's more than that. I think there's actually kind of like a ideological component to it that we need to take seriously, which is that the measurements are still, even in light of the variations that we do see, there are still trends, and the measurements are still predictive, right? Like, as far as the preference stuff is concerned, it's not like that invalidates the stuff that exists in the Harman research in the first place. right? And I think what's happening, and this is just what I see, and maybe you see something different, but the people who are, let's say, a little bit more anti-measurement leaning are using some of the new findings that have come out as a result of um, the measurement variation and in situ performance as ammunition for
The
some of the
measurements are
ideas.
useless.
Yeah, some of the
Uh,
sort of measurement rejection, and I want to just kind of like put up the brakes against that, um, because that's not how this should go, quite frankly. And it is not an invalidation of any of the previous and then existing preference research that's been done, because that's one of the key takeaways from all of that we can have, is that the measurements, like headphone measurement data, flawed as it is still predictive of listener preference. Frequency response is still the number one predictor by far. So even if you don't have in your microphones to understand the in situ performance, or even if you don't have a BNK5 and 2.8, it is still highly relevant and highly useful. I want to get your sort of take on, I guess. Have you come across this kind of sentiment? Have you seen people using this as
yeah,
ammunition?
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, I've definitely encountered this, but I think for one, it's usually always um, people who are very clearly engaging with the data in a way to get whatever result they want in the first place. So they're not interacting with the data in good faith, and they're usually not the kind of person who is taking a taking a very active role in the discourse around measurements, right? Like these are usually people who see content about measurements and are like, I'm not going to engage with that because this is stupid, blah blah blah, and this is why. Um, and I feel like people who
Well, no,
are
no.
using this as
You-
a signal to not engage with it are usually not people that tend to get much purchase in the discussion because
yeah,
frankly I think most of the people in like large community spaces that aren't headfi do understand that there is value to this stuff.
Well, what I see commonly, and maybe this is just me, but I see a lot of people who you kind of know are kind of in the anti-measurement crowd saying, "Don't get me wrong, measurements are super useful, but here's why they suck, and here's why they're useless."
Yeah,
Like they're
so I find most of the people who say that the part that they think is useful is usually the part that's like oversimplified and actually kind of wrong.
yeah.
Um, like I see that from a lot of people who like learn to read Crinical's 711 IEM
Mhm,
measurements,
mhm, mhm.
and that's like how they learn to read measurements, and they don't understand all of the reasons whatever they learned 2-3 years ago is probably not actually a great way to glean information from this data.
Mhm.
Um, and they
Oh
don't
yeah, the
often know the
tonality people.
caveats that are needed to. Yeah, no, Oris nails it in one word. I'm
Yeah,
saying so many words, but it is much more succinctly put as,
yeah,
yeah, the people who learned to read well enough to get some broad strokes
yeah,
idea of tonality, but don't know how to understand the data well enough to get anything past that. When all of that data is still, you can glean that stuff from the data a lot of the time. Um,
yeah.
so when it comes to like my take on it, like if that's a
Well,
if there's
the
anything there.
reason the reason why I'm curious about this is that is one of the criticisms that I think we get for exposing this reality to do with in situ behavior and acoustic behavior of these devices, right? Which is a
You've told me the measurements are now useless.
yeah.
Why would I keep watching you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or even just like, hey, we had this map that was predictive. Why are you now like showing me the places where it's not? Like it's it's almost like a question of what of like the pragmatism of pointing out the issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just needs to be said. We didn't spend all this money on measurement gear to like authoritatively give you a narrative based on that data. We bought the measurement gear because we're interested in examining how these things behave. But ultimately, what we're looking to convey is the closest thing to the truth we can surmise about these devices. The measurement gear helps us do that in very critical, important bands of the music playback, but it doesn't do it everywhere. So it is incumbent upon us to be honest about that stuff. And even if it weakens our authoritative position in the discourse to do so by instilling doubt as to the performance of these measurement fixtures and their human-like relevance, that's just a compromise we're going to have to accept, because that's
Yeah.
the truth.
Now, one of the things where I have to hedge against, I don't know anybody else who like does this as much as we do, but basically I have to point the critical lens at us again, where one of the areas where we can, I think, be quite a bit better is in ensuring that we don't run into the same pitfalls that have kind of plagued some of the previous discourse on this stuff, which is the communication of the data. Because a lot of the time that's where the issues lie. And I don't mean just communication in terms of like us talking about it like, while we're doing a video review or something like that. I mean, the visualizations themselves need to be improved, and it is something that I think we're working on.
Yeah, there's a visual aspect that is going to be improved. I'm very, very excited for that. But I do think the communication of what the frequency response is telling an informed reading of that data is something we don't communicate enough in our review content. And I think part of it is that our visualizations are not congruent with the analyses we would make, which I promise, guys, it's something that's being worked on, and it's going to be a lot better. But I also think there's not a fear, but an expectation on my end that if I were to do more of that and spend more of my time linking the subjective aspects to what you see and don't see on the graph, people would just take it as me reviewing a graph, which would potentially be a fair criticism. But
so here's the thing, though, right? Like, I feel like if you have a sufficiently good graph, you could review the graph, right? In the sense that if you had like DRP data, that type of thing, and if you had a strong enough analysis of the sort of emergent effects of frequency response, you could, right? But this is the reality. We know what the discourse on this stuff ends up looking like, because there are people who are so the brain goes into a different mode when the graph shows up on the screen, basically.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm just replying to someone in chat here who had a question for me.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to the next topic? That's sort of all I had on this one. To me, it's more of just sort of like a flagging of an issue that I see cropping up in light of the new sort of understanding of headphone measurements as things are emerging. Griffin is deep in.
Sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to finish that
mode
while I was fresh in my mind. KZO, there are a lot of examples of stuff like this where people look at a measurement and they see very distinct, obvious features like a bass rise or a treble rise, but they don't know how to contextualize that one with the rest of the response. They don't know, like, they see these things and they see, a certain shape in the mid-range, and for some reason will still attribute a tag of like neutral to something that has all of these, large deviations. So there's the aspect of they haven't even really understood tonal balance completely quite yet. But there's also the issue of they don't know how to look at a graph and immediately know what instruments this is going to be affecting and how.
Or like when you see the huge sub-bass shelf on Crin's stuff, that this means that this is going to end up causing the bass to sound quite slow, right? Or the product to sound quite slow, right? Or like kind of
like people can understand an amount, they can understand a number of a lot of bass or a little bass, but they don't really have the intuitive unpacking that comes with playing around with EQ a lot.
That's the biggest thing.
That tells you how this is going to affect certain instruments. And frankly, once you've done it enough, you can know at a glance, like very quickly.
Yep.
And that's not to say you can just review based on a measurement, because there's plenty of confounding variables to why you wouldn't hear exactly what's on the graph. but it can get you really close, a lot closer than with no measurement,
Yeah.
and just trusting some random reviewer's impressions, which is part of why we do it. But
I
I
also think that just it's
okay.
like it's more fun to just give a vibes take as well sometimes, you know? And people, as far as like what people like, right? Like they're like, "Oh
Yeah, no,
yeah."
I think viewers do like the vibes takes quite a
Yeah.
lot more than being walked through the measurement if they're not measurement interested. But I do think there's also a lot of appreciation for the people whose interpretation has been
Oh,
improved by content. What's up?
Rob Hawk says Mr. Ryan uses the li. What does that mean? The something cream analogy to describe
Ice.
measurements. Ice cream. They can tell you the flavor, but not if it tastes good. I saw there was somebody else giving an analogy of like it's like reading the list the nutrition information on the back of a something
I don't
food
like
item.
I don't like
I
that.
hate that. That's such a
Yeah,
bad analogy.
it's a really bad analogy.
It's not at all what it is. Um, but yeah, anyway, so to get back to the point, I really do think like the more people experiment with EQ filters to raise and lower various different bands to understand how those changes affect their music playback with those devices, the better understanding they have of frequency response and its effects, right? Because I think that's the biggest missing link for all of this is that like the effects that people are only familiar with when they're looking at frequency response at the moment is this broadband tonal balance bass mids and treble kind of thing. They're not at all familiar with the how it impacts or affects the rest of the sort of subjective experience, even though it does.
Yeah, yeah, they see it as these two separate uh, things that do not cross over or touch each other at all when they are the same.
Oris's take here. Yeah, so I've been debating making like a video on this, right? Or maybe that's something I could put on my own channel or just something because it's my own perspective, right? On this, the only reason why I don't like using subjective language and haven't for a long time is because I know how people take that. Like I know I've grown up in the subjective lexicon of HeadFi and SBAF and all these different places. So I've and Discord as well. I've come to learn what people if they hear somebody talking about dynamics or detail or soundstage, what they take that to mean. And they take it to mean that they take it to mean something that is independent of what you do when you EQ. And that's the problem. I don't want to contribute to an erroneous the perpetuation of an erroneous layer of evaluation, right? I don't mind reporting my own subjective experience subjectively or in terms of some of these things because I do think these effects are real, like the effect of something being more resolving, right? Or more like you can hear more textural nuance in whatever, or there's more slam or whatever. The sort of private language that we think the supposed shared language, let's just say it is private language, that sort of emerged out of this. I don't want that. I just don't want that to overrun into people treating it as real acoustic properties because it's not. There is no separate layer of that is a soundstage other than maybe like a psychoacoustic openness, right? There's no separate layer of resolution. There's no separate layer of dynamics or any of that shit, right? It's just these are the only ever the subjective effects. And I think if people can understand that, then I have no problem with talking about it like that, right? But my worry is that I know people don't think of it that way. So whenever you continue to report this stuff, it's like you're talking about now we get to talk about magic, and I fucking hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have my own disdain for it as well. I just think that's honestly one of the most important frontiers of this discourse is to actively demystify it by using the language but shoehorning in explanations of why it's happening. Um, that's pretty much always just been my approach to it naturally, just because that's how I hear this shit and how it makes sense to communicate it. But I am hearing the spaciousness because of X frequency and Y frequency is, I think, both the best way to analyze this stuff, but also I think the discursive middle ground that is probably going to lead to this stuff getting demystified more than just not addressing
Yeah.
it.
It's unfortunately less fun. So this is yet more ammunition for us being the fun haters club.
Yeah.
Uh, let's move on to the next subject. 'Cause we still have a couple to go here, I think.
Do we? I mean,
There was oh well, I did at least. There was
oh, the forum.
yeah,
Yeah,
want to
we
give
can
a
talk
shout out
about
to Don Joe for our continued dialogue and discussion on front bias free field sound or conditions for or emulations for headphones versus the diffuse field ones for trying to personalize something to your HRTF, let's say.
Yeah, so this is
Uh,
from the forum thread on forum.headphones.com, which is called Tuning EQ to Your Personal HRTF. So if
yes,
anyone wants a better understanding of what we're talking about here, what Resolve is probably talking about mostly,
yes.
um, check out that thread because that's where most of the discussion has been going on around this.
So I do want to be clear though. Don Joe and I have been having a we've been having a debate or a disagreement. Let's just say, um, and I also want to give a shout out to DJ Hastings for the absolutely based perspectives and takes in there, and very cool concept recommendation for trying to get um, your HRTF right. Which is to use a a VR headset. Um, this is something that like because I've been chatting with a listener about like potentially just doing this for fun, right? Like for ourselves, doing the Joel spin in the chair method for getting the DFHRTF, right? But as DJ Hastings correctly points out, like the biggest problem with doing this is it's very imprecise and very difficult to make it precise for what you need it to be. Um, so the idea is to basically, and I haven't fully gone into this, but he linked a web page there that was basically using a VR headset to minimize the error in terms of the direction that you end up facing. That's sort of my understanding of it. So I think that's super cool and something I want to look into. Maybe a lower barrier to entry, and let me know your thoughts on this, Griffin, because maybe this is a stupid idea, but maybe a lower barrier to entry for getting personalized DFHRTFs is, or maybe there's a process that can be developed
The thing
with
is, the
VR
front of your
headsets.
head does affect your HRTF, like your
And having
nose,
a big thing there's gonna fuck that up.
your
That was my first
HRTF.
first thought. Yeah.
Like there's a reason hats fixtures have noses and faces. And
Yeah, but at the same time, there's like VR type or like AR augmented reality glasses and stuff like that. Like there's a potential for something like this, you know?
maybe. And like, look, if you're, I do wonder if there's maybe some sort of, yeah, AR glass thing that could maybe for someone like you who does wear
Yeah,
glasses,
wear glasses
um,
anyway, right?
serve as a reasonable enough replacement there. Personally, I think the whole thing is pretty janky. I wouldn't use it, like especially because with HRTFs, one of the problems is positional consistency, not only of the microphone but the head. Like
Hmm.
you want the head to be in the same spot for all measurements that you do, unless you're doing what they're doing here, where you're using the AR to to move your head instead of the speaker. But I don't know. This seems like an opportunity to introduce quite a bit of noise and imprecision to
Well,
it all.
yeah, but of a different kind, right? Because
Yeah,
especially if you're doing it by yourself. um,
yeah, and like, look, this is we're seeing this across the scientific community, but in audio science, it's no different. Every fucking paper you see is going to have AI or the word neural in the title,
yeah.
because that's where capital decides to put capital. Um, but when it comes to the like large company aspirational implementations of audio, HRTF acquisition is like one of the foremost things that people are spending money on trying to solve as an issue for easy like acquisition of HRTFs. There was a very good paper done recently about interpolating the interpolating HRTFs based like complete HRTFs based on very little actual speaker data. So I think they got it down to something like 12 speakers was enough to interpolate enough of the whole HRTF, not for our use, which would be DF HRTF, so power summing all of that stuff with weighting
Hmm.
to get a
But
diffuse
like all of
sync
the
curve.
yeah, yeah, you're talking about like,
But
all
like
the
for
individual.
VR and AR
Yeah.
applications
Okay.
where you want to emulate object-based audio and, a
Hmm.
real sonic environment, um, that is something that a ton of money is going to right now because companies like Meta are very interested in the world of VR. Um, and they're spending a lot of money to make things like that more convincing. So I think this is an area that we'll see progress in, like a lot of progress in within the next 5 years. But I think for
Hmm.
now, unfortunately, we're still kind of in this situation where, yeah, we just don't really have any reliable way to do it easily at home or any way to simulate it based on things like head scans or pictures or anything like that. We're just a little bit behind, I think. So I think once we get
Yeah.
there, we won't have to think so much about getting these clunky VR sets and looking at points on the wall that are projected by the headset that wouldn't really give you HRTF data anyway. It would give you what Don Joe says, head and headset related transfer function.
Yeah.
Um, so KZO mesh to HRTF is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about a technology that is still well behind in terms of its accuracy compared to real acoustic measurements. There's a paper done by a few of the people we've mentioned before on the program, like Fabian Brinkman and Katerina Pollock, um, investigating that. Like these are the people who have done a lot of the work, like instituting the SOFA format, which is spatially oriented format for acoustics, which is where or how HRTFs are stored by and large in the acoustics literature. Um, these people have done investigations into
They
mesh to
are.
HRTF. They're the people who made mesh to HRTF.
Yeah.
Like,
One would say they are sofa kings.
yes, but the research seems to indicate that we're still a little bit behind in terms of simulations versus real acoustic measurements, and it's enough so that again in the HRTF critical bands above 3 kilohertz, you know, 3 to 10 decibel differences is not what we want to see. Um, because that kind of
Yeah.
defeats the whole point. Like you might as well just use a generic one at that point, right? So
Yeah. I I did want to note this came about in more to do with the, I guess, debate between me and Don Joe, and maybe also I'm just blanking on the other person's name, DJ Hastings. This was a response to basically the idea of trying to. I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, Don Joe. I don't want to mischaracterize the position, but I think you are advocating for the Griesinger method or the Greisinger method. I don't know how to say that, but that would be a front bias free field type sound field, right? And that's where um, I think DJ Hastings and I are sort of pushing back. But it also kind of gets back to this, to me at least, the idea of breaking the DF condition and whether or not that is a potentially good idea, right? Because one of the things that we have seen in the development of headphones over the last, well, quite frankly, many of the novel things that have come out in headphones that aren't like, hey, HD 600 and 650s and stuff like that. The novel headphones like the HD 800S that are trying to do something a bit different do break the sort of traditional norms around the sound helmet condition, right? Like as far as the sound signature tunings that they end up going for, um, or at least they're not as congruent as it. They're not as they're further away from that than the norm. Let's just say. And then there's more wild ones like the OAE one, which is trying to go even further, like to even to really break that. And to me, it's an interesting question because I think, from my perspective at least, and this is all respect to Axel Grell, um, I don't think that the OAE one worked. I think it was bad.
I think the consensus has been settled on that fact.
Yeah. Um, he told me that people seem to like it, and so Blaine can eat some crow. He put it in a fun way. Oh, Blaine's in chat.
Stop by just to call me a furry and
Yeah.
leave.
But yeah, so I want to get back to Don Joe's sort of conjecture here, right? And I don't want to
What
mischaracterize.
exactly? And Don, if you want to, within however many characters is allowed,
Yeah.
give a short version of it.
So he says a little bit here. He says, so since yesterday, I'm just hitting back against the assumption that headphones produce a DF similar response. Well, they would only do that if they are tuned that way, right? The frequency response is highly relevant here.
Donjo says this isn't about whether the OAE works or not. I just brought it up for illustration that headphone sound has directivity because of the driver angle. Yeah, true. Absolutely true.
Right. But that doesn't change the sound the listening condition of wearing headphones and how that's different from listening to speakers at a distance or any sound source at a distance. And that's what we're talking about, right? It's not about the fact that the frequency response is going to change as a function of where you position the driver in the cup. We know that's true, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like even if you had an ear speaker, like not even a headphone chassis, like
It's
like a
still on.
K1000
Yeah,
or something,
yeah,
because when you move your head, the timbre doesn't change. It is
yeah.
still a diffuse listening condition, if not a diffuse field necessarily.
Yeah. And so the idea is, in order for that to not sound weird, we want that condition to reasonably match the, um, well, yeah, we want the sound field to match the listening condition. But again, this is a little bit of a tangent from this. I just want to say, why is it that so often when people hear DF, they immediately jump to Sean's thing, but DF wasn't actually preferred? When that's not what we're talking. That's not what anybody's talking about.
I mean, because that was a pretty important conclusion of that
Oh, I
work.
know, but that's flat DF. That's
Yeah,
not
I mean the whole
a.
like preference adjusted DF is a very niche
Yeah.
thing still, I think. Like I think obviously we've done it a lot in our content and Kryn does it now, so and LPG is
Blames.
gonna be doing it, so
Yeah.
it will get more purchase, but I feel like
To me that's like the most it's the most non-relevant response, and yet it gets used as the response all the fucking time.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I don't blame people for doing that. That
it's
just
a
means
misunderstanding.
they're not
Yeah.
terminally tuned into our content.
Yeah. Anyway, this is sort of besides the point.
Yeah.
Um, so sorry, Don Joe says it's not the DF sound. It does sorry. Therefore, it's not a DF sound. It doesn't produce the FR as if it was coming equally from all directions. What do you mean by that?
So he follows by no, I
Okay.
don't see how it would sound diffuse. It's a fixed FR that fits a specific direction. The fact that it's constant when you turn your head changes nothing in the timbral perception. The latter part of that sentence, that the fact that it's constant when you turn your head changes nothing
Yeah.
about the timbral perception, is incorrect.
Yeah.
Is not true.
Yeah.
Which is why when it comes to emulating actual spatial audio, you don't just need emulating a pair of speakers in front of you. You don't just need the frequency response of those speakers. You need typically a room emulation of some sort, which involves modeling reflections.
Mhm.
But you also
So
need head tracking. You also need something that when you turn your head, the timbre changes in a reasonably realistic way. Um, that's how you actually spoof the spatial processing part of our brains and get it out of the diffuse listening condition
yeah.
of stereo playback on headphones.
So Don Joe's, if I'm parsing it correctly, conjecture here is that the uh just because you're not having the location, or just because you're also having a location interpretation, right, or location change interpretation when you're listening to sound sources at a distance, when you change your head, doesn't mean you don't also have a timbral, or doesn't mean you're not also able to perceive a timbral difference. That's correct, right, Donjo? That's your position. So to say that again,
It's the same timbre. If you like it facing forward, you like it facing left. I don't get your argument that the qualitative evaluation, it doesn't change, but it establishes the starting point. Like if it's the same timbre of, say, the OAE one or something tuned to free field, I'm not going to like it facing any direction because it doesn't meet the expectation of diffuse listening.
Yeah. So again, I think Donjo, it's like if the inverse of what you're saying is the like if you're trying to basically um use the point of timbre also being a relevant factor when you change your when you have a positional change or direct change to directivity of the sound, as a way to indicate that you could theoretically get a timbral change in the sound helmet condition too, and have that now move the other way towards an indication of a positional or directivity difference as well. I don't know that that's necessary. I don't know that that follows. That to me is where this kind of breaks, right? So just because you can hear just because you can also hear a timbre change when there is a change to the directivity when you turn your head relative to a speaker, doesn't mean that if you only heard that acoustic event in the sound helmet condition, the timbre wouldn't be weird. I know there's many double negatives in there, right? But the timbre would
Yeah.
like it would
It,
definitely
it,
sound
it's
more
it's
weird
it's probably
if you
easier to
got
just
that.
say it's probably easier to just say that the difference we experience in real life when shifting our head is much smaller perceptually than the difference in frequency response we would see between that head
Yeah,
shift,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is why the dramatic single measurement of a single position is just not a very uh,
Yeah.
relevant approach here, especially because, and this is kind of just my theory about where a lot of the free field apologia comes from. I feel like people are just EQing a big dip somewhere in the treble into their headphones and preferring the sound. But I
That
feel
is
like because we
exactly,
know
yeah.
so little about how that headphone is going to respond on your head, you may be EQing out a really big peak that
Or it's
cutting 10
EQing,
decibels does actually improve the timbre as it would look against your own diffuse field HRTF. Like there's no way
or
for you to know you're not doing that really.
it is building in the preference tilt that a typically decent speaker
Sure.
would impart, right? So you're enjoying that overall balance. Now, I want to like steelman Don Joe's position here again because I think it's relevant because there are folks like Greisinger putting this kind of thing forward, right? And I want to make sure it's like the right. Let's take the argument that it is for its timbral benefits, right? And I as I said in that thread, like there are people who report really liking the Grell OAE1 for its timbral effects, right? For the timbre that it imparts. Most of us think it sounds really weird, and that's kind of the problem with it. But if somebody is able to, have like maybe there's a person for whom the front biased timbre effect is itself a priming feature. I don't know. That's to do with their acoustic, psychoacoustic system. Then that might work, right?
I mean, I think people
Um,
can just like weird stuff. I don't really think we have to read into it
maybe
like it's
maybe
a
maybe
free
we're
field
we're steel
thing
manning
or
too much here. Yeah,
yeah, like I don't know. I
yeah.
I
I'm
I
just,
I feel
yeah.
like people have opinions of that headphone, and some people are gonna not like it
Well,
because
but
of
also it's
obvious
because
reasons, and
I've,
some people are gonna like it because of less
yeah, yeah.
obvious reasons.
But it's also because I've talked to Axel Grell about this, right? And I know why he's trying to do this, right? I know why it's interesting to him. Um, no, so I know, but Donjo, we bring up the OAE one because it is exactly the reason why this doesn't work. um,
Or
like
it's an example of
it's
why
an
this doesn't work.
example,
I
right? It's
do
the
think OAE one is kind of a specific example where because it achieves that response on humans, I actually think on rigs, I actually think it probably looks worse on humans.
Yeah, I think you're right because the positional, like it's a very positionally sensitive device.
Well, also it dips in that region that rigs really overestimate, so the dip probably looks even more dramatic on a human head. Um, Azad, what the fuck, bro? You gonna do me like this?
Uh, all right,
Turning the people against me?
I think it's time for spicy hour. For folks who want to get
Sure.
more into the personalized HRTF EQ stuff, check out the thread on the forum on that. Spicy times. Wait, are you actually a furry? Like, is
No,
is
I'm
people
not.
okay? Are people being mean?
I mean, I wouldn't say they're being mean. Blaine's just being a shitter.
Okay. I think of any of us, I imagine I feel like Blaine
Blaine
is
is
still
absolutely the closest to a furry, and it's not close.
yeah.
Um, but I don't think Blaine's a furry either. Like, I think it's
Okay, why is it that this hobby has this like a you know
the
next
the
to it or
uh,
like involved in
the
it at all?
incredible overlap of weebs and furries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the terminally online Venn diagram, right? Like
Yeah.
this hobby is. I mean, the online part of this hobby invites people who are at their desk a lot and people who are very online, and a lot of those people are weebs. Furries are both.
Hero STB says I stubbed my toe on an inaccurate IEM measurement today. uh, wow, everyone giving the correct answer.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it is funny though.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Do you have any spicy takes? Like
do I have any
over the
spicy
last
takes? I mean,
yeah the last week?
my spicy take is to do with the headphone on my head right now, which I already kind of said. It's just this is Hi-Fi Man's best headphone by
It's been
a stratospheric margin, and
it's been spicy for your life
it,
because now
it
you have
has
to
been spicy for my life.
yeah.
It has made me challenge the companies I have any positive feelings towards, and yeah, it has made me upset at
Wait,
how
Blaine
good it
says he's got a
is.
spicy take for us, so we'll fill some dead air for Blaine
But
because
he
he's going
needs
to
to
get to
get
his.
his PC.
Yeah. All right,
Is he gonna try and
Rob
join?
says ice cream is a dish best served cold. Yes. All right. KZO Dolby Atmos mixes are goaded, and stereo mixes sound lifeless and dynamicless. Um, so I don't know. My experience with this has been that the Dolby stuff, it sometimes, often, is cool, but I don't know that I would choose to listen to that over the stereo one necessarily. Um, and I maybe this is probably just me. I never find myself using the like spatial audio, like not the Dolby, but you know when devices can do like the thing
Yeah.
with the head tracking. Like I've used it to test it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I'm never like I want that with headphones. You know what I mean? Like I'm never like, please give me that in front of me experience for some
Yeah, I don't
reason.
know. I kind of get where KZO is coming from. Like in having tested them both, spatial audio, like proper like Atmos spatial audio conferred over a device that can capably play it back. When it works really fucking well, and you get not only a more vivid sense of positioning and engagement, but the bass hits like way harder than stereo playback because it's playing by different headroom rules, and obviously the frequency
Mm,
response is different, and there's a sense of actual decay and stuff like that. So I don't know. There is enough going on that I could see someone very clearly preferring the kind of spatialized object based version of a mix versus a stereo version. A stereo has many limitations that we've all kind of learned to accept and potentially even enjoy, but it does not change the fact that there are limitations that spatialized music just gets rid of. So when it's done well, yeah, it'll sound pretty fucking sick. But I can't say I have many like music experiences where I've really felt that to be the case. I have felt that consistently with movies though. Like whenever I listen
mm,
to like a spatial audio movie on Apple TV, it's crazy. It's so cool.
yeah. When Steven Wilson was doing his demo like last year, um, to demo kind of like his um, spatial audio mixes that he'd been doing. What was cool about that is it revealed the different ways in which somebody could create these mixes. So it wasn't just like everything is super spatial or not, right? It wasn't just like a binary, like this is stereo and this is like now immersive. Spatial is the wrong word. Sorry, Dolby mixes, right, or that type of thing. Like immersive audio, let's just say. There's a lot of flexibility in how it's done by whoever is creating this. And so some of them were like very much just a little bit of it, and then others were like full on, just like let's have a drug trip with sounds. And all of it was cool. And he gave the most based answer because I asked him like, well, like how do you determine how you go with it? Like, is there something that you're trying to be faithful to? And he's like, nah, I just do what sounds cool. It's like, all right, fair. um so
Don Joe
all right.
says hearing the opposite side speaker with each ear ruins the stage and imaging on speakers and should never be introduced with crossfeed and headphones. Homie is trying to turn speakers into headphones here. Because like, yeah, I don't really know how.
Well, no, but the latter part of that I'm good with. You should
I
never try
disagree.
and
I
do
think
this
that's
with.
what is the point of crossfeed and headphones if not that? I mean, I don't
No, but
think
that's what
I don't think
I
crossfeed
get the
should be
point.
used in
That's
most.
yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah. I get the point of it. I'm just saying that the last part of it, crossfeed and headphones, is like if you take the first part and the last part, crossfeed and headphones ruins the sound.
Yeah, that's I would say broadly true, but I'm not sure this is an issue with the stage and imaging on speakers, or at least I wouldn't frame it like that.
Yeah.
Argus says
Uh,
Dolby X Curve is one of the shittiest things we are using for $1 million projects. Yeah, I mean it's not great. I don't know. I don't hate it. I think for movies specifically, it is not quite representative of what actually ends up being the sound in a lot of movie theaters around the world. Um, I think it's fine as a reference. If I remember it correctly, it's like flat bass with a down shelf in the treble somewhere, which is fine. It's just yeah, I think a lot of movie theaters actually boost quite a bit of bass in the playback system. So it ends up being this situation where if you're using X curve and you're mixing a lot of bass into it, the playback system most people are going to hear it on also has a bass shelf, so you're going to get a lot of bass.
right.
Faye says,
Now you're just skipping one here. Come on.
wait, which one?
Listener is a planar enjoyer.
I mean, I've always been a planar enjoyer. My number one
This is
headphone up to this point
false.
has been no, the LCD4 is my number one
Oh,
headphone.
that's true.
It's just that headphone doesn't exist for purchase, so I don't get to shill it.
Oh.
But yeah, true. Source gear is really just expensive hardware EQ. When you need to start pairing transducers with non-clinical sources for it to sound good, and the transducer is not good. This is a terrible take.
Sources
Not the
are
second part. Not the second part. Like if you need cope from a fancy box on your desk to like your headphone, you don't like the headphone.
no. Source gear is really just expensive hardware to look cool on a desk.
Yeah.
That's
The difference is EQ does something quantifiable, repeatable, identifiable, whereas source gear doesn't do that, and it being
well.
treated like
With
that
that said,
is not
I have a headphone here that I very much enjoy, that I can't wait to talk about, but I can't yet. That I am intentionally going to be running with a tube amplifier because
ooh.
you know what it is, and
Well, no, I
I think
do. I'm not sure if it would work for me, but it might work for you.
I don't know either if it's going to work for me. That's I want to try it, and the reason is because that's going to be part of the story of this product.
You think so?
I think so because of what it's an evolution from, right?
Fair
So
enough.
context around tube amps and stuff like that is a relevant thing for people, and I want to try it.
Yeah, I think that is the only case where it is EQ or relative or
Or other higher output impedance combinations and stuff like that.
yeah, it's just that's not what Faye's talking about.
No, I know.
Faye is ankles deep in the source memeing right now, and I blame my friends.
Okay. All right, Blaine.
Blaine, yeah. I'm starting to think that that scatter plot line chart curve isn't the right visualization for headphone measurements. Okay, so this is a very potentially deep question, but if you'd like to explain, would love to hear what you mean. Because not sure what other alternatives immediately come to my mind, at least.
Colors.
Maybe. Oris says AirPods sound so much worse on iOS compared to other operating systems. I think that's a cold take. The
Wait, which one
iOS,
though?
well, the iOS gives you the volume EQ, whereas on the other operating
No, I
systems,
know.
three.
Oh, I okay, 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 yeah, gotcha.
Um, Rary Crussell says, "Do you think that perfecting measurements and HRTF, therefore making it far easier to find exact personal preference, will somehow diminish the hobbyist aspect of headphones, or only enhance it?" Yeah, it'll diminish the hobby part where the hobby is buying shit. Um,
Well, this is really interesting question. I mean, like, we there's a part of this, like, our job is broadly involved in the hobbyist side of this too, right? Like, we're in this, right? And it's partly as a
our
function
source of funding is in this, yes.
yeah, exactly. Um, and so us sitting here and saying that yes, it's going to diminish it is like on the one hand, like I think it would be a good thing, right? If there was a more sensible approach to this kind of stuff, where a lot of these kinds of a lot of the relationships that people have to this equipment is improved, right? And I think that's kind of what this is getting at. Um, but to me, it's like there's also like a light at the end of that tunnel where that improvement is like um, way more valuable to imparting better experiences of music to people than what they're getting currently because they're in the hobbyist side of this stuff, right?
Yeah,
So for
the
me,
hobby right now is a replacement for actually good sound quality. It is a thing
yeah,
that people have
yeah,
kind of propped up and uh not created, but it started. It's a thing that happens between the manufacturers and sellers
yeah.
and the
And
consumers, but
to,
they have all kind of propagated, bought into, whatever you want to call it, this idea that uh, of what sound quality is, and what the borders of sound quality are, and it all exists within this box of limited possibilities. And I feel like even the stuff we do with measurements can take people out of that box and into the actual sound quality scenario where you can actually optimize whatever you're hearing, instead of just buying the thing that may or may not work for you and you learn to cope with whatever character it has. I think the HRTF part of it all, once that is easier to get on an individual basis, will go even further in that respect. But I think we're already at the point where the hobbyist aspect and the rubric for sound quality as it exists within the realm of whatever companies have to offer you has already been greatly diminished by
I think
measurements that
massively, yeah.
exist.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's like there are still like the we talk about this a lot, but basically like the people who want to spend $2,000 or $5,000 on a esoteric product are still going to do that,
yeah,
right? I think,
which gets to what Blaine said, I think.
yeah. But as far as like making stewarding great musical experiences, HRTF and measurements and understanding that stuff better is a massive, massive benefit. Um, and that come sure if that comes at the cost of the diminishment of the hobbyist aspects of this stuff, then great. Right, I to be clear, I don't begrudge people for getting into the whole like this is my beautiful object thing and I love this thing and it has the craftsmanship and all the whatever, right? That's cool, but like I care about how my music sounds ultimately, and I want people to have great experiences with music. I want my recommendations to people for headphones or to my analysis of measurements to help steward people to have these great experiences with music too. Um, so if the hobbyist side of it can kind of get on board with that, that's kind of the best of both, right? If we can get enthusiasm for beautiful objects that also are comfortable and sound great, then we all win. So in a way, like if the hobbyist side of it wants to
Continue
want to
existing and
grow,
even better
yeah,
product. Yeah.
then it needs to be better. Yeah.
Yeah. X2 Joe says newbies should only be recommended stuff with a bright tilt because the clarity is going to be the main focus with them. I hate this take,
Interesting.
but I understand this take because I feel like when a lot of people are buying an audiophile headphone, they have certain expectations for what it's going to do, and I think more treble is likely to meet that expectation versus less treble. However, I think the more prudent thing to do is to address those expectations and tell them why they're the wrong expectations.
I don't understand Azad's take there.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is bad therapy.
Oh, okay.
It's referring to what Blaine said a few messages before that.
And then another one from Blaine. We should pronounce Z out and Z in as semi-syllable. So Zout and Zin. Yeah, I'm on board with that.
People are gonna confuse Zin with the chewing tobacco.
I would not have. SBC AAC apex quantization distortion is tasteful coloration.
I hate
tasteful.
That take. I hate that take. Terrible.
That's my least. That has to be a meme. I don't think equal loudness curves work well for music. Pure tones, yes. Complex tones, no.
I think I don't think any of the intelligent quotes around that uses of equal loudness in playback devices like the AirPods Pro 3 has been useful at all. But some people might like it. I don't know.
It's hard to kind of, I don't know, from my perspective, it's hard to kind of assess that. At least, it will just be given the myriad of program material that everybody is using, like the wide variety of that. And so I don't know. It's almost like that has mostly resulted in more confusion around whether or not any of these products are good because people are having very different experiences with them.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've been reading any more of Blaine's contributions here, but he's talking about how curves were never really intuitive characterizations of the sounds of audio devices to begin with. Like we have, as he says, we've been trying to backfill perceptual pertinence into them by, for example, using log scales on the axes, using smoothing to solve the disconnect between what we perceive and what we see. And
but Blaine, have you considered this as a pet theory that's ruining the discourse in the industry?
No, but like seriously, I think there's something here. I do think kind of I don't want to give too much away. I do think a ideal scenario is that there's some sort of engine that takes measured frequency response and interprets it for the person who would be interested in finding out the frequency response or sound of a headphone without hearing it. This would have to be a fairly complex model of sorts trained on, probably actual people's interpretations of frequency response, which, I mean, me saying that out loud, it makes it sound like MDAX. I'm not necessarily talking about MDAX, but, it would need to be something like that. Blaine with the insane flex here. My pet theories dictate the direction of research in the industry. I do see, I think, where you're going with this, Blaine. I do think there is still a place for the, decibel on one axis, decibel SPL on one axis and frequency on another visualization of frequency response. There are probably more intuitive visualizations, but I think they would need to be paired with either some sort of interactivity or some sort of very simplified output. Probably not the most interesting thing to discuss on stream, though.
Or when he actually decides to join.
But imagine somebody saying, why would you draw lines between dots on a time series? I mean, I get what you're saying, but you know the answer why, obviously.
Yakucho says Beyerdynamic will make good headphones now because they are Chinese now. It starts with the DT270 Pro.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he's sniffing a flat plate measurement that looks somewhat similar to an FT1, but it's not going to be. It's going to be worse than an FT1.
Okay, but the original part of that, the first part of that question was very like maybe.
I don't
It's like
know.
if you're gonna make, so here's this is an interesting one because it's like with a blank slate that could be true because if anything, Chinese manufacturers try to make products that are very competitive, right? Like, and we've seen that in the IEM space, and we see that with a lot of the with even in the over ears stuff as well. But because Beyerdynamic is sort of grandfathered in as like a legacy brand, it's like I don't know that they have a reason to care about making good products. So
Well, I mean, clearly the company either wasn't doing well enough or had enough of a,
at
I
the
guess,
scale that they were operating, that's always the thing.
existential question as to it was worth doing this as they were doing it. Enough of a question that they decided to
Yeah,
sell to this company.
yeah.
So there is incentive, I think, to improve the sound quality of their devices. There always is, because you know, at least we like to believe that improved sound quality would improve sales.
Mm, it's just whether or not the gamers use it.
Conjecture, but what are you doing?
My autofocus is just going all kinds of crazy, and it's annoying me. I probably shouldn't care.
It does not matter. I'm using an iPhone right now, man.
Oh
The people probably do not care.
no, they do not. They do not.
But anyway, yeah, just kind of finishing on Blaine's point. He says where we are now may be seen to be primitive and backwards in the near future. Given how quickly the time scale of this stuff goes, I think that's a certainty. Like I already feel that way about like raw visualizations against the Harman target, and that is a much smaller difference to what we have now versus what you're talking about. Um, so yeah, we'll probably look like idiots in the future, but that's what growing is all about.
Well, it depends. If we have our druthers, we'll look like idiots in the future. That's what we want. whether we'll that future, or whether we will be alive to see that future, I don't know.
Ah, true.
By the time that rolls around,
Yeah,
because
I
this
feel that.
stuff to do with sound quality does feel like it moves rather slow sometimes.
With sound quality, yeah, I feel like with
Yeah.
measurements it has moved quicker
Oh, in the
historically.
last little bit, it's moved. It's moved very quickly.
I
But
think even when it came to stuff like Kryn starting up, it was a very quick change that the
that's what I mean. I think
industry
the
was
critical of it all was
slow
a
to adopt, but eventually did.
yeah. All right. Anything else, or should we call it there?
It depends if anyone else has any spicy takes or if you have anything else you want to talk about.
Do I
Oh,
have anything else?
did you get your Krongle?
I did.
Have you played with it at all?
No, it's still in this.
Got it.
It's like what happened was like, so I moved, got to the new address, and then like everything showed up at once. So I've been kind of going through the the stuff. Um, yeah.
Audio with Arga, no. So yeah, this is the Crane Ear Protocol Max, which he just mentioned in his video about the Daybreak update. Did you see that video, by the way?
I saw that he dropped the video update. I didn't actually see it.
He mentioned us in it because we uh, made us think about the coffee tips, so he started including the
I
coffee
figured
tips.
that's exactly what it was.
But it was also a really cool video. He went
Yeah.
to some guy who I think runs the factory or something like that, and had a discussion with him about the changes that they were making to the Daybreak for things like parts falling off the cable or stuff like that. So it was cool content. I really think he should do more
I,
content like that whenever he
I
produces products in the future.
I gotta say, I love that he's calling stuff Pro Max. It's so fun to me.
It is pretty funny, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I got to try this a little bit. Like I agree with something like this existing. I think it's a good thing. I feel like the main issue with it is the squig link of it all, the crin graph of it
Oh yeah,
all, the interpretation,
the
not the
usual.
interpretation, the interface
Yeah,
having to be tied to that, and the interface currently not being all that great. Like I think it'll probably be better in the future, but for now it seems a little scrungly and not super intuitive to use. And this is a completely separate complaint, but I just wish Crin's measurements were better. Like I wish like the single measurement of it all is just kind of a shame.
Well, this does get back a little bit to what we were talking about before, but like for the purposes of like trying to EQ a thing, it's very much a critical of it all approach, right? That's what this seems like. But
Yeah.
if anything, I'm more curious how Sennheiser is going to do their. I've seen nothing to do with their app for the 630, so I'm curious how that's going to go.
It's gonna go well.
But
It's only
in the
5 minutes,
past,
but
sure. But in the past, they did this with. They had these kind of like. It's kind of like when you go to get your glasses prescription, and then they like say, "Is this clear? Is this clear? Is this clear?" They had like
it's
a
not
very
that. It's just
okay,
parametric EQ. It's
oh,
just
okay,
it is a boring parametric EQ.
or
You're
okay,
going
okay.
to like it.
I don't know. Part of me likes those like the things where you get to actually like listen to music and then be like, okay,
Oh,
this is
sure, but
yeah.
this isn't
Because
going to.
I feel like
I think it
with
might still have that somewhere. It'll be in a different
yeah,
area of
because
the app, though.
well, the reason I say that is because I feel like one of the downside with the clinical paradigm of Squiglink and EQ is that you're going to end up with a lot of false positives, like a lot. Like a lot of people are going to basically be like, "Oh, this is the EQ for blah blah blah," and therefore I'm getting the sound of whatever, and now I have false confidence about the sound at the sound that I have, not realizing what you actually need to do with EQ to get it to be actually good sound.
So
Um,
here, STB's hot take is that the auto EQ button should be removed from Squigs. It usually leads to atrocious results.
yeah.
Um, yeah, one of the I think main failings of the kern graph squig link thing is that it gives people too much freedom to fuck shit up. There are a lot of, especially on like the graphers of people who like know more like Crin. There's so many functions that you you can use to misunderstand or make your experience worse, which plays very nicely into Blaine's take, which is a
Well,
measure of whether a visualization is good will be how intuitive it makes EQing things to sound good.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. Um, though I'm not sure about the premise that EQ should be a skill is an insane one. Well, it depends on if you define skill as having some knowledge. um, because
Yeah.
even color grading a monitor, you need to have some knowledge of what you're doing. Um, like with a spider or whatever, right? Like colorimeter. Um, yeah, man. Like, have you tried the EQs from Rune? Even like the ones that have been okay. It's so hit and miss. I was so on board with that project initially, and then I started trying them. And I was like, "Oh, what happened here? I don't know." um,
Yeah.
so sadness all around. Why do you guys keep saying things that make perfect sense while attaching hot peppers to?
It's a good question. That is how a lot of it goes here. There are sometimes some bad spicy takes, but most of them are broadly agreeable,
Yeah, yeah,
at least in this room.
yes.
Um,
It's because the audience here they've grown, right? They know things.
anyway, Blaine says the delta in required skill there is tie shoes versus assemble ship in a bottle.
But
Yeah, the
you
the,
know,
the time
it's
differential is also similar there.
but to channel, the inner Constantine here, there are effects, and I mean, there is still a skill.
All right, Blaine is saying we should ban IEMs.
All right.
We should,
On that note, we should probably end. It's a very positive note to end the stream on. Um, like here's the thing. You know what saddens me about IEMs is that the current, in order for me to be able to appreciate, like genuinely love an IEM without EQ, I have to find something that is
so weird for other people.
unlikely to be made in the current market trend of IEMs. You know what I mean? Like it's unlikely unless.
Do I know what you mean?
Of course, you know what I
Do
mean.
I know? Of course, I know what you mean.
So like it's not even about like, okay, I'm not even lamenting the long boy ear canals of it all, right? I'm lamenting the the trend of, like everything is trying to aim for the same visual marketing success. And when you have a dip at 6 kilohertz and an emphasis at 8 kilohertz, that looks a bit more weird. But I bet there's also a lot of people who are like me who would genuinely appreciate that.
Well, I mean, they would need to measure it in a condition similar to your own
Of-
ear
of-
for those
I
characteristics.
know, I know exactly, right? Yeah, but the concern is the sort of homogenous nature of the products that are coming out means means that if it happens to be bad for you, that's a problem. That's why I can't really take much. I don't get much information from IEM reviews that is all that relevant to me.
Wait, Blaine has something.
Okay. What is that one though?
No idea.
The circle of confusion is a dumb concept with functionally no empirical backing.
Oh, it doesn't have as much empirical backing as I think people think it does. Yeah.
I also think it is a dumb concept.
I think it's a noble concept. I don't think it's realistic.
You have to be like really fucking like solving the circle of confusion pill to be on the to like still be on the single line train, I feel. Because that's still like that's the core sort of ideology behind so much of it, and to me it was like never going to work. Confusion isn't a circle, it's an amorphous blob covering everyone. All right, and I'm blank. You like the people there though. You've met them. You know. You heard one of their products that you liked. It's true. I was there. I was in the room. This man liked a Noble IEM, one of the expensive ones too. All right, I need to go.
I do too.
So yeah, once again, big thanks to headphones.com making all this stuff possible, making what we do on the headphone show possible, empowering us to research as we do, empowering us to provide the measurements that we provide, and also you can buy headphones there. They have a return policy that is very good, 365 days, and it's full of good people with good recommendations, better recommendations than Griffin's. I don't know about mine, but
My recommendations are fucking great.
I'm just kidding.
My recommendations are perfect.
Hey, Sam does have good taste, though, I think. As does Alan.
Yeah.
Anyways, also we have a forum.headphones.com. Chat with us there. Our Discord linked below. And I think that's it.
And stay tuned for Edition XV review on the main
Tomorrow.
channel tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.